I need sons and you need a lover, the lonely Apache woman told the mountain man, words that changed everything in the frozen Colorado wilderness. A gruff mountain trapper seeking shelter finds an Apache widow desperately fighting to keep her sons from government agents. She's out of options. He's drowning in loneliness. When she makes him an offer that would shock the devil himself, a marriage of pure desperation, neither realizes they're walking into a deadly trap. The mountain man thinks his gold can save them. The Apache woman believes marriage papers will protect her family. But when morning comes with badges and legal documents, they'll discover that their greatest enemy hides behind the very law meant to protect them. Can two broken hearts survive when love becomes the most dangerous gamble of all? Every time I see your comments, I'm reminded how stories connect us across distances, backgrounds, and hearts. If values like respect, courage, and compassion still guide you, then you're part of this story too. The bitter wind howled through the Colorado Territory mountains, whipping snow into Melito Callahan's face, despite the heavy wool scarf wrapped around his neck. His weathered hands, protected by thick leather gloves, gripped the reins tightly as his horse pushed forward through the deepening drifts. Behind him, his pack horse struggled under its load of beaver pelts and trading goods. The late afternoon sky had turned an ominous gray, promising worse weather to come. Melito's breath frosted in the air as he muttered a quiet prayer. Mother Mary, just a bit of shelter would be mighty welcome right about now. As if in answer, his pack horse let out a distressed whinny and stumbled, nearly going down in a deep snowbank. Melito pulled up short, knowing he couldn't risk losing his animal or supplies in these conditions. He squinted through the swirling snow, searching the white landscape for any sign of shelter. There, a thin column of smoke rose in the distance, barely visible against the heavy clouds. The Apache Reservation trading post. He'd traded there before, though not recently. It would have to do. The storm intensified as he urged his horses toward the promise of warmth and safety. By the time the sturdy log building came into view, the snow was falling so thick he could barely see 10 feet ahead. Melito guided his horses to the shelter of the trading post's overhang, his joints stiff with cold as he dismounted. Voices carried through the wooden door, one harsh and demanding, the other firm, but quieter. Melito stomped the snow from his boots and pushed inside, bringing a swirl of snowflakes with him. The scene before him made his jaw tighten. A well-dressed white man, clearly a government agent by his bearing, loomed over a native woman and two young boys who clung to her skirts. The woman stood straight and proud despite the agent's intimidating stance. "The law is quite clear, Mrs. Yazzie," the agent was saying, his tone dripping with false patience. "All Indian children must receive proper education and civilization. The government boarding school will provide—" "No." The woman's voice was clear and steady, though Melito caught the slight tremor in her hands as she gripped her son's shoulders. "She Yaji, my children, they stay with me. They learn our ways, our stories. The agency school takes that away. Now see here." The agent's face flushed red as he stepped closer, raising his voice. "I am Agent William Brennan, and I have full authority." Melito had seen enough. Without conscious thought, he moved forward, his 6'2" frame casting a long shadow across the scene. "Seems to me the lady's made her wishes clear, friend." Brennan spun around, his angry expression faltering as he took in Melito's size and the hard look in his eyes. The trapper knew he made an imposing sight. 3 months' worth of dark beard, buckskins worn smooth by the elements, and a face weathered by years in the mountains. "This is official Indian agency business," Brennan blustered, though he took a step back. "It doesn't concern you." "I reckon any man threatening a widow and her young ones concerns me plenty." Melito's voice was quiet, but carried an edge of steel. The agent's gaze darted between Melito and the door, clearly calculating his options. Finally, he straightened his coat with an attempt at dignity. "I'll be back with proper authority. Don't think this is finished, Mrs. Yazzie." After Brennan stormed out into the snow, Melito turned to find the woman studying him with careful consideration. Her sons peered around her skirts with curious eyes. "I am Belinda Yazzie," she said in careful English. "Thank you for your help, though I fear Agent Brennan will only come back angrier." "Melito Callahan." He touched the brim of his hat in greeting. And you're probably right about that. A particularly fierce gust of wind rattled the trading post's windows. Belinda glanced at the storm, then back at Melito's snow-covered clothing. You cannot travel in this weather. We have room in our home tonight if you wish shelter. She spoke with quiet dignity, making it clear this was a gesture of hospitality between equals, not an obligation. The offer stirred something in Melito's chest, something he'd thought long buried with Maria and Elena. He pushed the feeling aside and focused on practicality. Much obliged, Mrs. Yazzie. I'd be grateful for a roof tonight. The morning sun glinted off fresh snow as Melito stepped out of Belinda's modest cabin. The storm had passed, leaving behind a pristine white blanket across the reservation. His breath clouded in the crisp air as he surveyed the work ahead. Fallen branches littered the yard and the livestock pen needed clearing. Without being asked, he grabbed Belinda's worn axe from beside the woodpile and began splitting logs. The rhythmic thunk of metal striking wood filled the quiet morning. From the corner of his eye, he noticed Tommy and Sam watching from the porch, their dark eyes curious but wary. You boys ever split wood before? Melito asked, keeping his tone casual as he worked. Tommy, the older one, lifted his chin. We help Mama sometimes, but the axe is heavy. Melito nodded, reaching into his coat pocket. Reckon that's honest work. Might be easier with some strength in your belly, though. He pulled out a piece of jerky, tore it in half, and held it out to them. The boys glanced at each other, then at their mother who stood in the doorway. At her slight nod, they approached carefully and accepted the offering. Thank you, sir, Sam said quietly, the first words Melito had heard from the younger boy. Just Melito's fine. He selected a smaller log and gestured to Sam. Want to learn the proper way to hold an axe? Sam's eyes lit up, though he looked again to his mother for permission. Belinda stepped forward, her face showing both concern and something else. Assessment, perhaps. Be careful with him, Mr. Callahan. Yes, ma'am. Melito positioned Sam's hands on the axe handle, adjusting his grip. Now, the trick is to let the weight of the axe head do the work. You don't need to force it. They spent the morning working together, splitting wood, feeding the horses, and clearing paths to the livestock pen. The boys gradually relaxed around him, asking questions about mountain life and trapping. Melito answered patiently, demonstrating how to check the horses' hooves for ice and sharing simple tricks for staying warm on the trail. Throughout the day, he caught Belinda watching these interactions, her expression thoughtful. She worked alongside them, her movements efficient and purposeful, occasionally speaking to the boys in Apache when giving instructions. As evening approached, Melito led his horses from the barn, prepared for the journey back to his cabin. The setting sun painted the snow-covered mountains in shades of pink and gold. He was securing the last of his gear when Belinda approached, her shawl pulled tight against the cold. Mr. Callahan. Her voice was clear and direct, much like the night before. I would speak with you before you leave. He turned to face her, noting the determination in her stance. Of course, Mrs. Yazzie. I need sons and you need a lover. The blunt statement caught him off guard, and he nearly dropped the reins he was holding. Belinda continued, her eyes steady on his face. I see how you watch my boys with longing, how gentle you are with them. And I see the darkness in your eyes, the same I carry since losing my husband. She gestured to the trading post where they'd first met. Agent Brennan will return. Without a husband's protection, I am vulnerable. The tribal council questions if a widow can raise sons properly alone. Melito found his voice. Mrs. Yazzie, Let me finish. She held up her hand. You live alone in the mountains, yes? That is a hard life for one person. I can cook, clean, tend gardens. My boys can learn to help with trapping, with horses. Her voice softened slightly. We both know loneliness, Mr. Callahan. Perhaps we could ease it together. The practicality of her proposal struck him even as his heart raced at its implications. She was right. His solitary life in the mountains was wearing on him, and the thought of helping raise two boys stirred something deep in his soul. But the memory of Maria and Elena's graves still haunted him. This is quite a proposition, Mrs. Yazzie. It is survival, she replied simply, and perhaps more, in time. Milito removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair as he considered her words. I need time to think on this, to pray about it. Belinda nodded, unsurprised. How long? 3 days, he said after a moment. I'll return in 3 days with my answer. We will wait, she said, then added softly, and we will pray also. The mountain trail seemed longer and lonelier as Milito rode home that morning. Snow crunched beneath his horse's hooves, and the winter wind whispered through bare branches. His thoughts kept returning to Belinda's direct words, to the quiet strength in her eyes. His cabin appeared through the trees, a simple log structure backed against towering cliffs. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, his morning fire still burning low. But instead of the usual comfort, the sight made his chest tighten. The emptiness felt heavier now. Inside, he moved automatically through familiar motions, hanging his coat, stoking the fire, setting water to boil. His gaze fell on the small wooden cross mounted above the fireplace. Beneath it sat 2 carved figures, a woman and a tiny infant, Maria and Elena. Milito knelt before the cross, his rough hands clasped. Lord, I don't understand your ways, he whispered. Why take them? And now, this Apache widow and her boys. His voice cracked. Would it dishonor their memory to start anew? The cabin offered no answers, only the soft pop of burning wood and distant wind. On the crude table lay Maria's Bible, its pages worn from countless readings. He opened it carefully, touching the dried flower pressed between its pages, a reminder of their courtship days. Miles away at the reservation, Belinda faced her own trials. She stood before Chief Standing Bear in his lodge, accepting his concerned frown with quiet dignity. Niece, the chief spoke in Apache, your proposal to this white man troubles me. Our people have suffered much from broken promises. Uncle, Belinda replied respectfully, I see few paths to protect my sons. Agent Brennan grows bolder. The mountain man showed kindness, strength, and respect for our ways. Standing Bear studied the fire. These are hard times. The old ways change like wind-blown sand. He sighed deeply. I will pray to the spirits for guidance. Later that day, Belinda visited her husband's grave on a quiet hillside. She knelt in the snow, speaking softly in Apache. My love, our sons grow strong, but they need protection I alone cannot provide. The mountain man has gentle hands and honest eyes. Guide me if this path is wrong. At home, Tommy and Sam peppered her with questions while helping prepare dinner. Mama, will the mountain man visit again? Sam asked, grinding corn with practiced motions. Did you see how tall he is? Tommy added excitedly. He showed me how to check horse hooves for ice. Belinda smiled at their enthusiasm, noting how they'd responded to Milito's quiet strength. We will see, she answered carefully. For now, mind your grinding. The third evening brought Father Miguel Santos to Milito's cabin, his mule laden with books and supplies. The Mexican priest's weathered face creased with concern as Milito related recent events. Ah, mi hijo, Father Santos said, warming his hands by the fire. You fear dishonoring Maria's memory, but consider, perhaps God sends this opportunity not to replace your loss, but to heal through new love. Milito stared into the flames. Father, it's not a proper courtship. It's an arrangement. Many holy marriages began as arrangements, the priest replied thoughtfully. The Lord works in mysterious ways, often through practical needs. This widow needs protection for her children. You need companionship. Perhaps God's hand guides this meeting. But she's Apache, I'm Irish Catholic, the cultural differences. Father Santos smiled gently. Love knows no boundaries, Milito. The church has blessed many mixed marriages on the frontier. What matters is respect, commitment, and faith. He paused, then added, and those boys need a father's guidance just as you need children's laughter to fill this quiet cabin. They talked long into the night, the priest's wisdom slowly easing Milito's troubled heart. As Father Santos prepared to leave, he placed a hand on Milito's shoulder. Pray, yes, but also listen to your heart. God speaks there too. Before dawn the next morning, Milito saddled his horse. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, but the sky was clearing, stars still visible in the lightening sky. He touched the cross at his throat, Maria's last gift to him, then turned his horse toward the reservation. The rising sun painted the mountains gold as he rode, his decision made, but his heart both heavy and hopeful. Whatever God's plan might be, he could no longer deny the pull toward Belinda and her sons, toward the possibility of family once more. Dawn's first light painted the trading post windows in pale gold as Milito dismounted. Through the frosted glass, he saw movement inside. Belinda sitting at a rough wooden table with her sons. The familiar sight of a family at morning lessons tugged at his heart. He knocked softly, not wanting to startle them. Belinda's clear enter welcomed him in from the cold. The warmth of the pot-bellied stove embraced him as he stepped inside. Tommy and Sam sat close to their mother. A worn leather Bible opened between them. Their dark heads bent together as Belinda's finger traced beneath the words. Sound it out slowly, she encouraged Sam in English. Remember. Remember, Sam repeated carefully. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Milito removed his hat, snow falling from its brim. The boys looked up, their faces brightening with recognition. Mr. Mountain Man, Tommy exclaimed, then quickly corrected himself. I mean, Mr. Callahan. Belinda rose gracefully, her long black hair gleaming in the lamplight. Welcome, she said simply, but her eyes held questions. I've done my thinking, Milito said, his voice rough with emotion, and praying. He stepped closer to the table, noting how the Bible's pages showed signs of frequent use. I reckon God brought us together for a purpose, protection and companionship, both things we need. Belinda nodded slowly. You accept my proposal then? Yes, but with proper respect for both our ways. Milito laid out his thoughts carefully. I'll move my trapping operation closer, build a proper home, court you proper like, get to know the boys, do things right by Apache custom and territorial law both? A wise approach, came a deep voice from the doorway. Chief Standing Bear entered, his dignified presence filling the small room. He studied Milito with keen eyes. You trap in the high country? Yes, sir, these past 8 years. Show me your hands, the chief commanded. Milito held them out, scarred, calloused, honest working hands. Standing Bear nodded, then asked rapid-fire questions about survival skills, weather signs, hunting practices. Milito answered each one, showing respect for both Apache wisdom and the chief's authority. Finally, Standing Bear's stern expression softened slightly. You know our ways better than most white men. This is good. He turned to Belinda. Niece, I see wisdom in your choice. This man understands the land, respects our people. Relief crossed Belinda's face. Thank you, Uncle. Mama, does this mean Mr. Callahan will teach us about the mountains? Sam asked hopefully. In time, young one, Belinda smiled. First, let us share a meal together. She began setting out corn cakes and dried venison while Tommy fetched fresh water. The simple domesticity of it warmed Milito's heart, a feeling he'd thought lost forever. But their peaceful moment shattered as running footsteps approached. A young Apache man burst through the door, chest heaving from exertion. He spoke rapidly to Standing Bear in Apache, holding out an official-looking document. The chief's face darkened as he read. Agent Brennan has filed claims, he translated grimly. He says your late husband owed $800 in unpaid taxes and trading debts to the government. Belinda went still. That is impossible. Joseph kept careful records. The agent demands payment within 30 days, Standing Bear continued, or your family's land allotment will be seized. $800? Milito whispered in shock. It was an impossible sum for most frontier families, let alone a widow. There is worse, Standing Bear's voice grew heavy. If payment is not made, the boys become wards of the state. Brennan would have legal authority to place them in the government school. Tommy and Sam pressed closer to their mother, understanding enough to be frightened. Belinda's arms encircled them protectively, but Milito saw the flash of fear in her eyes before she masked it with determination. "This is his revenge," she said quietly, "for my refusal yesterday." Melito picked up the document, scanning the dense legal text. His jaw tightened as he recognized the scheme. He'd heard of corrupt agents using similar tactics on other reservations. What had started as a practical arrangement for companionship had suddenly become something far more urgent. "We'll fight this," he said firmly, meeting Belinda's gaze. "Together." 2 weeks passed like water flowing in the mountain streams. Each dawn brought Melito closer to his new life, as he methodically relocated his trapping operation nearer to the reservation. His hands, rough from years of working trap lines, now shaped pine logs into a temporary lean-to shelter. The simple structure stood as a first step toward his future, catching the morning light through gaps in the fresh-cut wood. Every day, his boots carried him down the path to Belinda's homestead. There, he threw himself into the heavy work, mending fences, chopping firewood, and repairing the roof that had started to leak. Tommy and Sam watched him at first from safe distances, curious but cautious, like young deer studying a newcomer in their meadow. But children's natural curiosity proved stronger than hesitation. One morning, as Melito checked his trap lines, Tommy's voice piped up behind him. "What are you looking for, Mr. Callahan?" Melito knelt in the damp earth, pointing to subtle marks in the soil. "See these tracks here? That's a beaver's print. And these broken twigs? They tell us which way he went." Sam crouched beside his brother, dark eyes wide with interest. "Our father taught us about tracking deer," he said softly. "Your father was wise," Melito responded, honoring their memory while building a bridge to their present. "Maybe you boys could teach me some of what he showed you?" The brothers shared a look, then Tommy nodded. "We know how to read the wind, too." Day by day, their lessons grew. Melito showed them how to maintain traps safely, read approaching storms in the clouds, and find north without a compass. In return, they taught him their Apache names for plants and animals, correcting his pronunciation with giggles that grew less shy each time. Belinda watched these exchanges with quiet approval. In the evenings, as the boys played nearby, she taught Melito basic Apache phrases. Her patience matched his earnest efforts to understand her culture's deeper rhythms, the importance of extended family, respect for elders, and the sacred connections between land and people. One night, as they sat by the cooking fire, Melito found himself speaking of Maria and Elena. "The fever took them so quick," he said, his voice rough with old pain. "3 days from first cough to last breath. I wasn't ready to say goodbye." Belinda's hand touched his briefly, a gesture of shared understanding. "Joseph died 6 moons ago. A rockslide during the elk hunt. The earth gave no warning." She paused, looking at her sons. "The boys still call for him in their sleep." These quiet confessions built trust between them, transforming their practical arrangement into something warmer, more genuine. Their shared grief became a foundation for healing, like spring grass growing through winter's scars. Father Miguel Santos arrived one afternoon, his mule loaded with books and papers. The Mexican priest's weathered face broke into a smile as he watched Tommy and Sam demonstrating Apache tracking signals to an attentive Melito. "I have news," Father Santos announced over supper. "While researching the marriage records for your first wife's family, Melito, I made an interesting discovery." He pulled out a yellowed document. Maria's grandmother, Isabella, was not born Mexican as everyone assumed. She was Apache, found as a small child during the border conflicts 50 years ago. Mexican settlers took her in, gave her a Spanish name. Melito's hand trembled as he touched the faded paper. Maria never knew. Her mother never spoke of it. "Many such stories were buried in those troubled times," Belinda said softly. "But the blood remembers. This explains your natural understanding of our ways." Father Santos nodded. "God works in mysterious paths. Perhaps this connection was meant to help bridge our communities." The news spread quickly through both the reservation and Father Santos's Mexican parish. What had seemed an unusual union began to make sense through this new lens of shared ancestry. Chief Standing Bear spoke of ancient prophecies about scattered peoples finding their way home. The Mexican grandmothers at Sunday Mass nodded approvingly, seeing echoes of old frontier love stories in Melito and Belinda's growing bond. Tommy and Sam absorbed this revelation with childish practicality. "Does this mean you're part Apache like us, Mr. Callahan?" Tommy asked one evening. "A small part," Melito answered honestly. "But it means your mother is helping me find my way back to something my heart already knew." Belinda smiled at his words, her hand finding his in the gathering dusk. The fire crackled between them, casting warm light on two families becoming one, bridging cultures with every shared sunset. The wedding preparations brought life and color to the reservation like springtime after winter. Chief Standing Bear and Father Santos sat for hours beneath the cottonwood trees, their heads bent together as they wove two sacred traditions into one ceremony. Their voices mixed Spanish, English, and Apache, as they found common ground between different ways of honoring the Great Spirit. In Belinda's home, the steady click of her loom marked time as she worked on her wedding dress. Her skilled fingers wove intricate Apache patterns into the fabric, symbols of unity, strength, and new beginnings. Female relatives filled the air with the scent of cooking herbs and traditional dishes, their chatter a melody of shared joy and ancient wisdom. Melito gathered his finest furs, beaver, fox, and mink, carefully preparing them for trade. The journey to town took 2 long days on horseback, but his heart felt light. At the general store, he traded the pelts for a simple gold ring, its circle perfect as the sun. The storekeeper's wife smiled at his choice, though her husband muttered about mixing bloodlines. Melito held his peace, knowing his happiness needed no defense. Not everyone welcomed their union. Some tribal elders spoke in worried whispers about losing their ways. White settlers passing through shook their heads at news of the marriage. But love, like water, finds its path despite the rocks in its course. The wedding day dawned clear and bright. By the creek where Melito had first sought shelter from the storm, nature herself seemed to bless their union. Aspen leaves danced in the breeze, their shadows playing on the ground like wedding guests arriving early. Father Santos stood near the water, his weathered Bible in hand, while Chief Standing Bear prepared the sacred herbs for the blessing ceremony. The chief's deep voice carried across the gathering as he spoke of cycles, seasons, and the wisdom of joining different streams into one river. Tommy and Sam approached Melito, their small faces serious with the weight of their task. In their hands, they carried a wooden wolf they had carved themselves, working in secret for days. The figure was rough but full of love, its proud head raised as if to sing to the sky. "A wolf protects his family," Tommy explained, his voice steady. "Like you protect us now." Sam nodded. "And wolves mate for life," he added softly. Melito knelt to receive their gift, his throat tight with emotion. These boys, who had once watched him so warily, now offered their trust carved in wood. Belinda appeared like a vision in her hand-woven dress, patterns telling stories of courage and hope. Chief Standing Bear led her forward as Father Santos began speaking in Spanish, then English, his words bridging worlds as surely as the love between bride and groom. The ceremony flowed like the creek beside them, sometimes in Spanish, sometimes English, sometimes Apache. Sacred smoke from Chief Standing Bear's blessing herbs rose to the sky, carrying prayers in all languages to the same Creator. When Melito slipped the gold ring onto Belinda's finger, her hand steady in his, their eyes spoke what words could not. As the sun painted the western sky in wedding colors, the celebration began in earnest. Women brought out dishes that honored both heritages, Apache flatbread beside Mexican tortillas, wild game stewed with chilies, berries sweetened with honey, the air filled with the scent of feast and fellowship. Music rose as naturally as the evening stars. A Mexican vaquero's fiddle sang alongside Apache drums, finding harmony in their differences. Melito led Belinda in their first dance, their steps matching the rhythm of two hearts becoming one. Tommy and Sam clapped along, their smiles bright as the rising moon. Stories flowed like wine at a white man's wedding. Chief Standing Bear spoke of ancient heroes who had bridged nations. Father Santos shared tales of saints who had found God's love in unexpected places. Even the most doubtful guests found themselves nodding, seeing wisdom in this union of cultures. As night deepened, the new family made their way to Melito's cabin, no longer a lonely trapper's shelter, but a true home. Belinda's weavings brought warmth to the wooden walls. Apache decorations blessed each corner. Tommy and Sam's excited whispers filled spaces that had known too much silence. The carved wolf stood guard on a shelf, watching over this family born of courage and need, now bound by love as sure as the gold ring catching lamplight, as strong as the traditions they had woven together this day. The mountain cabin that had once echoed with Melito's solitude now rang with the sounds of family life. Morning sunlight streamed through new windows, catching the bright threads of Belinda's weavings that adorned the expanded walls. The main room, built with logs hauled by both Apache neighbors and white settlers who knew Melito's honest character, gave the growing family space to gather, cook, and share stories. Tommy and Sam's laughter bounced off the wooden beams as they chased each other around the kitchen table. Their mother stirred a pot of rabbit stew, adding herbs that filled the cabin with familiar Apache spices. The boys had taken to calling him Papa Melito naturally, the words first slipping out during a fishing lesson 2 weeks ago. Each time they said it, Melito felt his heart grow fuller. "Papa Melito, watch this," Tommy called, demonstrating a tracking technique they'd practiced earlier. His small fingers traced invisible signs in the air, remembering every detail of the lesson. "Well done, hijo," Melito praised, using the Spanish word for son that felt right on his tongue. He caught Belinda's approving smile. She encouraged this blending of languages, teaching the boys that wisdom could come in many voices. In the corner near the fireplace, a small shelf held precious memories, a tiny dress that had belonged to Elena, Maria's silver cross, and a lock of dark hair tied with ribbon. Belinda had helped him create this sacred space where grief could live without haunting every moment. Fresh wildflowers brought by Melito each morning added color and life to the shrine, honoring the past while embracing the present. "The deer will be moving down from high ground soon," Melito said, watching Sam practice with a small bow his uncle had made him. "Time for you boys to learn the Apache hunting prayers your mother wants you to know before we track them." Belinda nodded, stirring the stew. "My sons will walk in both worlds," she said firmly, strong in old ways and new. She had sewn intricate Apache designs into Melito's winter coat, protection symbols that made him feel wrapped in her care. Their conversations flowed naturally between languages now, Spanish terms of endearment mixed with Apache wisdom and English practicality. When Belinda spoke of her hopes for the boys' future, Melito understood her deeper meanings, even when words failed them both. But beneath their growing happiness lay a shadow that grew longer each day. Agent Brennan's fraudulent debt demand hung over them like storm clouds gathering. $800 due in 2 weeks, a fortune for a frontier family. Melito had counted his savings 3 times, $400 in gold and silver coins, earned through years of careful trading. That evening, after the boys were asleep, Melito spread his finest furs on the table. Beaver pelts soft as silk, fox furs rich and full, prime winter skins that any Denver merchant would desire. Their value could reach $300, maybe $400 if he found the right buyers. "The winter roads to Denver are dangerous," Belinda said softly, her hand resting on his arm. "The passes will be deep with snow." "I have to try," Melito answered, covering her hand with his. "Everything I own, everything I've saved. It still might not be enough, but I won't let Brennan take this land. I won't let him separate our family." Belinda's eyes shone with tears she wouldn't shed. "You've become more than a protector to us," she whispered. "You know this?" Melito gathered her close, breathing in the scent of herbs and wood smoke in her hair. Their marriage of convenience had bloomed into something neither had expected, a love as real as the ground beneath their feet, as vital as the air in their lungs. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I have to go. The boys need their home. You need your land, and I need my family." The fire crackled low as they held each other, the carved wolf watching from its shelf, guarding their dreams. Tomorrow, Melito would begin preparing for the dangerous journey to Denver. Tonight, he held his wife and listened to his son's soft breathing from the next room. treasuring these moments of peace before facing the storm ahead. The mountain passes to Denver tested every bit of Melito's wilderness experience. 5 grueling days of breaking trail through deep snow, leading 3 pack horses laden with his finest furs. Ice formed in his beard, and the bitter wind cut through his warmest coat despite Belinda's protective stitching. He made camp each night in the lee of rock formations, huddled close to small fires, thinking of the family waiting for him. The carved wolf the boys had given him rode in his shirt pocket, close to his heart. When his hands grew too cold to move, he thought of Belinda's warm smile, of Tommy and Sam calling him Papa Melito, and found strength to press on. Denver's streets bustled with winter commerce when he finally arrived. Melito moved between trading posts and fur merchants, bargaining hard for every dollar. His prime beaver pelts drew appreciative murmurs. The fox furs sparked bidding wars, but still he fell short of the needed $800. In a quiet moment at his rented room, Melito pulled out his father's gold pocket watch, the only thing he had left from Ireland. The worn case held an inscription in Gaelic and 40 years of memories. At the pawnbroker's shop, he got $50 for it. His prized Winchester rifle, the one that had kept him alive through countless mountain winters, brought another $100 from a gun merchant. By sunset, Melito had exactly $800 in mixed coins and banknotes, carefully counted 3 times. The return journey seemed faster, urgent purpose driving him through exhaustion. When he finally rode into the Indian Agency office yard, Father Santos was waiting, as arranged. The Mexican priest's presence would ensure everything stayed legal and witnessed. Agent Brennan looked up from his desk with exaggerated surprise. "Well, well, Mr. Callahan, what brings you to my office today?" Melito placed the heavy leather pouch of money on the desk. $800, payment in full for the Yazzie family's alleged debt. Father Santos stepped forward, his black cassock dusty from riding. "I am here to witness this transaction on behalf of the church and the Yazzie family." Brennan's face twitched, but he maintained his false smile. He counted the money twice, making a show of examining larger bills for authenticity. Finally, he wrote out a receipt in his flowing hand. Received from Melito Callahan, $800 in payment of all debts owed by the family of Belinda Yazzie. That evening, joy filled the expanded cabin. Chief Standing Bear sat in the place of honor, his weathered face relaxed in a rare smile. Other tribal members crowded the main room, sharing a feast of venison, corn cakes, and rabbit stew. The atmosphere hummed with conversation in Apache, English, and Spanish. Belinda presented Melito with a shirt she had woven in secret during his absence. The soft fabric bore intricate patterns, wolves for protection, eagles for spirit, and a special symbol she had created to represent their blended family. The careful stitching spoke of hours of love worked into every seam. "For my husband," she said softly, helping him put it on, "who would give everything to protect our family." Tommy and Sam had been whispering and practicing in corners all evening. Now they stepped into the center of the room, wearing traditional Apache dance regalia. Their small feet stamped out ancient rhythms as they performed a dance of gratitude and family bonds. Melito felt tears in his eyes, watching his sons honor him in their mother's tradition. The other guests added their voices in song, the familiar Apache melody carrying all their hopes for the future. Chief Standing Bear raised his hands in blessing over the family, speaking words of protection and prosperity in his native tongue. Later, as the guests departed into the cold night, Melito stood in the doorway of their home. The cabin glowed with lamplight, transformed from his lonely shelter into a true family home. Belinda's weavings brightened the walls. The boys' small belongings scattered about spoke of life and love. Even the shrine to Maria and Elena seemed peaceful, blessed by this new happiness. Tommy and Sam slept in their room, exhausted from dancing. Belinda banked the fire for the night, humming softly. Melito touched the carved wolf in his pocket, grateful for this second chance at family. They had faced Brennan's schemes and won through sacrifice and love. Their future felt secure at last, their blended family safe on their land. They retired to their bedroom, where Belinda had hung her finest weaving above their bed, a scene of mountains and plains meeting under an endless sky. like they're two cultures coming together, creating something new and beautiful. Milito held his wife close, thanking God for bringing him to that trading post on a stormy day, for giving him the chance to love again. The morning sun had barely cleared the mountain peaks when hoofbeats approached the cabin. Milito looked up from stoking the breakfast fire, his heart freezing at the sight of 3 official-looking riders approaching. Agent Brennan sat astride his bay horse, a satisfied smirk playing across his face. Beside him rode a stern-faced man wearing a federal marshal's badge and another carrying a leather portfolio, who Milito would soon learn was the territorial land assessor. Belinda emerged from the cabin, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders. Tommy and Sam peered around her skirts, their dark eyes wide with uncertainty. "Good morning, Mrs. Yazzie," Brennan called out with false cheer. "Or perhaps I should say Mrs. Callahan now. We have some official business to discuss." The marshal dismounted first, removing his hat respectfully. "Ma'am, sir, I have documents here requiring your immediate attention." The land assessor opened his portfolio, extracting several official-looking papers bearing territorial seals. According to Territorial Statute 47, Section 12, regarding the transfer of Indian allotment lands through debt satisfaction. Milito's blood ran cold as the man continued reading. The legal language was complex, but the devastating truth emerged with brutal clarity. There had never been any real debt. By accepting Milito's payment, Brennan had executed a legal trap, transforming the transaction into a purchase of Belinda's land allotment under territorial property laws. "You see," Brennan explained with obvious pleasure, "when Mr. Callahan provided exact payment for the alleged debt, he technically purchased the land rights, quite legal under territorial statutes. The precedent will be most useful for future similar situations." Belinda's face had gone pale. "You steal our land through paper lies?" she demanded, her accent thickening with emotion. "This is Apache land, our family land." "The law is quite clear," the assessor stated flatly. "Mr. Callahan now holds legal title. All previous occupants must vacate within 24 hours. The marshal handed Milito the eviction notice, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I'm required to enforce this by sunset tomorrow." Belinda turned to Milito, her eyes filled with betrayal. "You knew," she whispered. "How else did you bring exactly right money? You help him steal Apache land?" "No, Belinda, I swear I didn't know." Milito reached for her, but she stepped back, pulling the boys with her. "This was Brennan's scheme. I was trying to protect our family." "Not family," she said coldly. "Never family. Just another white man stealing from Apache people." She spoke rapidly to Tommy and Sam in their native tongue. The boys cast confused, hurt looks at Milito before following their mother to the stable. Milito watched helplessly as Belinda saddled her horse, lifted the boys up, and rode toward the reservation without looking back. The 3 officials mounted their own horses, Brennan pausing to tip his hat mockingly. "Congratulations on your property acquisition, Mr. Callahan," he said. "I'm sure you'll find it quite profitable to sell to proper settlers." Within the hour, riders arrived to escort Milito to an emergency tribal council meeting. Chief Standing Bear's face was grave as Milito entered the lodge. Belinda sat with her sons among her relatives, refusing to meet his eyes. "You bring shame to both peoples," one elder declared in Apache, which another translated. "Using marriage to steal land, worse than open warfare." "I was deceived too," Milito protested. "I sold everything I owned to pay that false debt, trying to protect them." Several council members called for his immediate banishment from tribal lands. Only Chief Standing Bear's raised hand restored order. "My niece's heart is broken," the chief said heavily. "Our trust is betrayed. Whether you meant harm matters less than the harm done." Milito returned alone to the cabin as sunset painted the mountains blood red. The rooms felt vast and empty, though Belinda's belongings remained, her loom still holding an unfinished weaving, the boys' carved toys scattered near the hearth, the family shrine now a mockery of his hopes. He sank into a chair, holding the beautifully decorated shirt she had made him just yesterday. Their celebration of love and family lay shattered by Brennan's cruel manipulation. Milito had tried to protect them, But his good intentions had instead destroyed everything he had come to cherish. Night fell, and coyotes began their mournful songs in the distance. But no children's laughter filled the cabin. No soft Apache lullabies drifted from the bedroom. No loving family gathered around the evening fire. Only silence remained, heavy with loss and betrayal. 5 days dragged by like an eternity. Each morning, Melito rode to Chief Standing Bear's lodge, hoping to speak with Belinda. Each time she remained inside, refusing to acknowledge his presence. Tommy and Sam watched from behind wooden posts, their small faces pinched with confusion and sadness. They would wave tentatively until called away by their mother's voice. The cabin felt like a tomb. Melito barely touched the food he prepared, pushing beans around his tin plate before feeding them to the dogs. His prayers had turned bitter, raging at God for letting him destroy the precious family he'd been blessed with. Dark thoughts crept in during the lonely nights. Perhaps everyone would be better if he simply packed up and left the territory altogether. On the 6th morning, as Melito sat staring into cold coffee, bootsteps creaked on the porch. Chief Standing Bear ducked through the doorway, his weathered face grave but kind. "You look like a man who has given up," the chief said, settling onto a chair. "This is not the warrior who protected my niece from Brennan." Melito's voice was rough from disuse. "I failed them. Everything I touched turned to poison." "Ah." Standing Bear nodded slowly. "Like when our medicine men prepare healing herbs. The strongest medicine often tastes bitter at first, but this does not mean it lacks power to cure. This is different. I destroyed their trust. True character shows not in avoiding all mistakes, but in how we answer when we fall." The chief's dark eyes held Melito's gaze. "Will you lie in the dust, or stand and fight?" Before Melito could respond, another visitor arrived. Father Santos entered, removing his hat and brushing trail dust from his black cassock. "My son," the priest said, "I've ridden 2 days to reach you. The Lord puts obstacles in our path not to destroy us, but to test our love's strength." Melito's laugh was harsh. "What good is love without trust? I tried to protect them and made everything worse." "Love requires more than good intentions," Father Santos said firmly. "It demands sacrifice, action, courage to make things right. This self-pity serves no one." The priest pulled territorial law books from his saddlebags. "I've been researching similar cases. There may be legal precedents we can use, but we must act quickly." As the men began poring over dusty pages miles away in Chief Standing Bear's lodge, Belinda fought her own battles. She mechanically stirred the morning stew, her thoughts far away. "Mama," Tommy said, watching her closely, "why can't Papa Melito visit anymore? He looked so sad yesterday." The innocent question pierced her heart. She saw genuine grief in Melito's face each morning, not the smugness of a man who had successfully stolen their land. Could she be wrong about his involvement? "He brought exact money, Tommy." How could he know unless he planned with Agent Brennan? "But Papa Melito sold his special watch," Sam piped up, "and his good rifle. He was crying when he packed them." Belinda's hands stilled on the spoon. She hadn't known that. Would a man in league with Brennan sell his most precious possessions? Through the lodge's smoke hole, she could see the mountain peaks where Melito's cabin stood. Their brief time as a family played through her memory, his gentle patience teaching the boys, his respect for Apache ways, the tender way he held her at night. Had anger made her too quick to believe the worst? In the cabin, Melito straightened suddenly, jabbing his finger at a legal passage. "Here, about fraudulent property transfers, if we can prove Brennan created a false debt." "And here," Father Santos added excitedly, "regarding protection of tribal allotment lands, the Territorial Supreme Court ruled." Chief Standing Bear smiled slightly, watching hope return to Melito's eyes. Sometimes the bitterest medicine truly held the strongest healing. As the sun set that evening, Belinda sat alone by her cook fire. Tommy's questions echoed in her mind. She remembered Melito's devastated face when she accused him, so different from Brennan's smug satisfaction. Her anger began to shift, focusing on the true enemy, Not the man who had tried to save them, but the one who had orchestrated their pain. Miles apart, both Milito and Belinda reached the same realization as darkness fell. They could not let Brennan's schemes destroy what they had built. Their love, though tested, might be the very weapon needed to fight back. But first, they would need to rebuild their trust and stand together. Father Santos burst into Chief Standing Bear's lodge, his black cassock dusted with snow, clutching a leather portfolio of wrinkled documents. His eyes sparkled with excitement despite his obvious exhaustion from hours of research. "I have found it," he declared, spreading territorial legal papers across a wooden table. "The law provides a solution we did not see before." Chief Standing Bear leaned forward, studying the documents in the flickering firelight. Belinda stood frozen by the cooking fire, her hands tight around a wooden spoon. "As Belinda's legal husband," Father Santos explained, pointing to a specific passage, "Milito has the right to transfer property directly to his wife without any government interference. The territorial marriage laws protect this right explicitly." "But how does this help?" Belinda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means Milito can give you back your land, legally. But," the priest's expression grew serious, "we must appear before a territorial judge in the county seat to execute the transfer properly." 3 days' ride through winter mountains, Chief Standing Bear noted gravely. "Dangerous journey." Father Santos nodded, then pulled out more documents. "But there's more. While searching the records, I discovered something disturbing. Agent Brennan has been running this same scheme across the entire territory." He laid out paper after paper, identical debt claims against Apache, Navajo, and Ute families. The amounts varied, but the pattern was the same. Impossible debts, forced collections, lost lands. 5 families in the past year alone, Father Santos said. All lost their homes to Brennan's fraudulent claims. He sells the properties to his accomplices at a fraction of their worth. Chief Standing Bear's face darkened with anger. "This is the proof we need. The territorial authorities must hear of this corruption." "I will testify," Father Santos agreed. "I have gathered statements from other victims. But first, we must reconcile this family." The chief nodded and sent a messenger to fetch Milito. When he arrived, his face was haggard from sleepless nights, but hope flickered in his eyes at the sight of Belinda. "Leave us," Chief Standing Bear commanded. The others filed out, leaving husband and wife facing each other across the lodge's central fire. Silence stretched between them until Belinda spoke, her voice trembling. "I knew in my heart you were innocent, but when Brennan revealed his scheme, I was so terrified." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Terrified of losing my sons, my land, everything my people have fought to keep." "I would never betray you," Milito said softly. "Everything I did was to protect our family. I sold everything I owned to raise that money. My father's watch, my best rifle. I thought I was saving us. I know that now." Tears slid down Belinda's cheeks. "The boys kept asking for their Papa Milito. They saw what I refused to see. Your love for us is real." Milito stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "I swear before God and your ancestors, I will make this right. I will transfer the land back to you and help expose Brennan's crimes, even if it means risking everything on this journey." "Not alone," Belinda said firmly. "We go together, as a family. The boys need to see us face this united." "It will be dangerous," Milito warned. "Winter storms, rough trails. We are stronger together than apart. Brennan tried to destroy us. Let him see instead how his schemes made our bond unbreakable." They embraced as Chief Standing Bear and Father Santos returned. Plans were quickly made. The priest would continue gathering evidence from Brennan's other victims, while the family prepared for their journey to the county seat. Tommy and Sam burst in, having heard the news of the upcoming trip. Their excitement filled the lodge as they chattered about their first real adventure with Papa Milito. "Will we sleep under the stars?" Tommy asked, bouncing on his toes. "Can I help with the horses?" Sam added. Milito ruffled their hair, his heart full. "Yes to both," But first we must prepare carefully. This is an important journey. They spent the evening gathering supplies, warm blankets, dried meat, extra ammunition. Father Santos marked their route on a crude map, noting safe places to shelter. Chief Standing Bear provided extra furs and medicine bundles for the harsh weather. The boys helped pack, their small faces serious with the responsibility. Yet their eyes shone with joy at having their family whole again. They worked alongside Milito, asking questions about trail signs and weather reading, soaking up his knowledge like parched earth drinks rain. Belinda watched them, her fear gradually giving way to determination. They would face whatever came together, not just for themselves, but for all the families Brennan had wronged. Their love, tested by betrayal, had emerged stronger. Now it would fuel their fight for justice. Dawn broke cold and gray as the family set out from the reservation. Milito led their small wagon train, with Belinda and the boys following on sturdy ponies. Fresh snow blanketed the mountain trails, making each step treacherous. "Stay close," Milito called back as they approached the first mountain pass. "Watch for any movement above." Tommy and Sam rode between their parents, wrapped in thick blankets against the biting wind. Their excitement about the adventure had sobered in the face of real mountain dangers. By midday, the snow began falling harder. The sound of cracking echoed across the mountainside, a warning of potential snowslides. Milito's experienced eye caught sight of a cave entrance just as the first avalanche rumbled in the distance. "This way," he shouted, leading them to shelter. They barely made it inside before a cascade of snow thundered past the cave mouth. Inside the cave, Belinda quickly organized their camp, while Milito secured the horses deeper in the cavern. Tommy and Sam helped gather wood for a fire, their small hands working alongside their parents' larger ones. As evening settled, they huddled around the flames. The forced intimacy of the cave brought them closer, physically and emotionally. Sam curled against Milito's side while Tommy leaned on his mother's shoulder. "Tell us about when you were little," Tommy asked Milito, his eyes bright in the firelight. Milito shared stories of growing up in a mining camp, learning to track from an old Cherokee scout. Belinda spoke of her grandmother's teachings about the sacred mountains. The boys listened, wide-eyed, as their parents' histories wove together like the patterns in Belinda's weaving. "I was scared too," Belinda admitted softly after the boys had drifted off to sleep. "When I first proposed our arrangement, but something in my heart knew you were meant to be part of our family." Milito reached across the sleeping children to take her hand. "God works in mysterious ways," he said. "Through all this trouble, He brought us together stronger than before." The second day dawned clearer but brought new challenges. They descended into settler territory, where a trading post offered their only chance to replenish supplies. Hostile stares greeted them as they approached. "We don't serve their kind here," the trader spat, glaring at Belinda and the boys. "Then you won't serve me either," Milito replied calmly, his hand resting casually near his pistol. "Though I reckon my gold spends the same as any man's." A group of settlers muttered darkly about Indian lovers and half-breed children. Belinda held her head high, speaking to her sons in clear English mixed with Apache phrases, demonstrating both her heritage and education. Her quiet dignity impressed even some of the hostile observers. One older woman stepped forward, offering fresh bread and dried apples. "Children are children," she said simply, smiling at Tommy and Sam. They made camp that night in a sheltered valley far from the trading post. Under a crystal-clear sky filled with stars, Tommy and Sam approached Milito as he tended the fire. "Papa Milito," Tommy began hesitantly, "when we go to the judge tomorrow—" "Could you adopt us?" Sam finished. "Be our real father?" Milito's heart swelled. He gathered both boys into his arms, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Nothing would make me prouder," he whispered. Belinda watched from across the fire, her own eyes glistening. Their family bond, tested by betrayal and strengthened by adversity, felt unbreakable under the vast, starry sky. The third day brought them to the county seat just as another snowstorm descended. They found lodging in a small boarding house run by a widow sympathetic to their cause. As they settled in, Father Santos arrived, his saddlebags bulging with documents. 6 more families, he reported grimly, spreading papers across the bed. All victims of Brennan's schemes, all willing to testify. They spent the evening preparing their case, the deed transfer papers for Belinda's land, testimonies from other victims, evidence of Brennan's territory-wide conspiracy. Tomorrow, they would face the territorial judge. "Whatever happens," Milito said as they gathered for a final prayer, "we face it together." The next morning, snow fell softly as they climbed the courthouse steps. Tommy and Sam walked proudly beside their parents, no longer afraid. Belinda squeezed Milito's hand as they pushed open the heavy wooden doors, ready to fight for their family and for justice. The courthouse's oak-paneled walls echoed with murmurs as Milito and Belinda approached the judge's bench. Tommy and Sam sat with Father Santos in the front row, their small faces solemn but unafraid. Judge Harrison, a gray-haired man with wire-rimmed spectacles, peered down at the deed transfer papers. "A simple property matter?" he asked, shuffling through the documents. "Your Honor," Milito began, his voice steady, "I wish to transfer this land deed to my wife, Belinda Callahan." Agent Brennan rose from his seat near the back, a smirk playing across his face. "Your Honor, I must object. This involves reservation land and federal—" "If I may, Your Honor," Father Santos interrupted, approaching with a leather satchel. "This case involves much more than a simple deed transfer." He spread dozens of documents across the judge's desk. These are sworn statements from 23 native families across the territory, all victims of Agent Brennan's fraudulent debt scheme. Judge Harrison's expression darkened as he examined the papers. "Explain." "Agent Brennan fabricated debts against native landholders," Father Santos continued. "When they couldn't pay, he seized their lands through legal manipulation, then sold the properties to his associates for personal profit." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Agent Brennan's face reddened as he tried to push forward. "These are baseless accusations." "Silence," Judge Harrison commanded. He lifted a document, squinting at the details. "These debt notices all follow the same pattern. Same amounts, same threatening language." He looked up sharply. "Marshal Thompson, secure that man." 2 deputies moved quickly to flank Agent Brennan, who suddenly looked much smaller than his pressed uniform suggested. The heavy courthouse doors swung open. A stream of native families entered, Apache, Navajo, and Ute, led by Chief Standing Bear. They filled the benches, their presence commanding respect, despite the hostile stares from some townspeople. "More witnesses, Your Honor," Father Santos announced, all prepared to testify about Agent Brennan's actions. Over the next 2 hours, family after family stepped forward. They spoke of false debts, threats against their children, and lost lands. Belinda's clear voice rang out as she detailed Brennan's attempt to separate her from her sons. When Tommy and Sam stood to speak about their Papa Milito protecting them, several townspeople who had threatened them at the trading post shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Judge Harrison's face grew sterner with each testimony. "This court has heard enough," he declared finally. "Marshal, place Agent Brennan under arrest for fraud, corruption, and theft of federal lands." The clank of shackles punctuated his words. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I hereby approve the deed transfer to Belinda Callahan and order an immediate territorial investigation. All lands seized through these fraudulent means will be restored to their rightful owners." Brennan struggled against the deputies. "You can't do this, these savages." "Remove him," Judge Harrison ordered sharply. The courthouse doors slammed behind Brennan's protests. As the family gathered their papers, several townspeople approached hesitantly. The older woman who had offered them bread at the trading post stepped forward first. "I apologize for how you were treated," she said softly. "Watching your family today? Well, love is love, ain't it?" Other mixed families emerged from the crowd. Mexican Apache couples, white Ute partnerships, each expressing gratitude for the family's courage in fighting the system. Chief Standing Bear placed his hands on Tommy and Sam's shoulders, speaking in Apache about the strength found in unity. Belinda turned to Milito, her eyes shining. "You did more than save our land," she said. "You helped save many families." "We did it together," Milito replied, drawing her close. Love and truth will always overcome hate and lies. The boys wrapped their arms around their parents' waists, creating a tight family circle. Through the courthouse windows, they could see the snow had stopped falling. The late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the town square where Agent Brennan's schemes had finally met justice. Father Santos approached with their copy of the deed transfer. "God's justice works in mysterious ways," he said, smiling. "Through one family's courage, many have found hope." They gathered their belongings, preparing for the journey home. The courthouse steps, which they had climbed in uncertainty that morning, now felt like a path to victory, not just for their family, but for all those who dared to believe that love could bridge any divide. 6 months after their courthouse victory, golden afternoon light streamed through the windows of the Callahan home. The expanded cabin stood as a testament to unity, its new rooms built by both Apache and white hands working side by side. Fresh-cut pine boards still carried the sweet scent of cooperation, while traditional Apache weavings adorned walls strengthened by settler craftsmanship. Milito sat at his desk in the Indian Agency office, now transformed from a place of corruption into a center of justice. His father's restored pocket watch ticked steadily beside him as he reviewed land restoration documents. The silver badge of his new position caught the sunlight. Indian Agent, it proclaimed, but his true title was Bridge Builder between two worlds. The Murphy family's wheat seed arrived for the Apache farming project, his assistant reported, setting down a manifest. Milito nodded, remembering how his own mixed heritage had opened doors. His first wife, Maria's Apache grandmother, had unknowingly paved the way for this role, where he could protect native rights while fostering understanding among settlers. At home, Belinda moved through their expanded kitchen, her 7-month pregnancy evident beneath her dress that combined Apache beadwork with frontier practical design. She paused to rest a hand on her growing belly, smiling as she watched Tommy and Sam through the window. The boys played with both Apache and white children in the yard, their laughter carrying no trace of the divisions that once threatened to tear them apart. "Look, Papa Milito," Sam called as Milito rode up. "I showed Billy how to track rabbit prints like you taught me." A white settler boy nodded enthusiastically beside Sam. "Can you teach us more tomorrow, sir?" "After school," Milito promised, dismounting. The new integrated schoolhouse visible in the distance stood as another victory. Children learning together, sharing stories and traditions. Inside, Tommy helped Belinda set the table, carefully arranging the mix of Apache pottery and Irish china that represented their blended life. "Did you hear about Agent Brennan, Papa?" he asked. "The federal marshal said he'll be in prison for 20 years. "Justice comes to those who harm others," Belinda said in English, then repeated it in Apache, a practice that had become natural in their home. But more important is the healing that follows. Evening settled over the mountains as neighbors departed. The family gathered in the main room, now a warm space where cultures met in harmony. Milito sat in his chair, carefully carving a wooden cradle. His skilled hands shaped both Irish knots and Apache symbols into the headboard, a legacy for the child to come. Beside him, Belinda worked on a baby blanket, her weaving combining traditional Apache patterns with Celtic designs she'd learned from Milito's family Bible. The wool threads shimmered in the lamplight, red for her people's strength, green for his Irish heritage, gold for their shared future. Tommy and Sam sprawled on the bearskin rug playing a game that mixed Apache stick counting with settler dice. Their easy laughter filled the house, so different from the fear that had once shadowed their lives. "Papa," Tommy called, "tell us again about the day you met Mama in the storm." Milito exchanged a warm glance with Belinda. "That was the day Creator sent me exactly where I needed to be, though I didn't know it then." Belinda set aside her weaving and moved to Milito's side. Taking his rough hand, she placed it on her rounded belly, just as their unborn child kicked strongly. "Feel that?" she whispered. "This little one already knows how to dance between worlds." "Like the sunrise touching both mountain and valley," Milito replied in Apache, his accent improved by months of practice. "Our child will know no borders of the heart." Sam abandoned his game to press his ear against his mother's belly. "I can hear them. They're saying they want to learn both Apache songs and Papa's Irish stories. And so they shall, Belinda promised, running her fingers through her son's dark hair. They will inherit all our strengths, all our stories. The setting sun painted the mountains gold through their windows, the same mountains that had once seemed to divide peoples, now standing as silent witnesses to love's power to unite. In their home, as in their hearts, there was no longer any separation between cultures. There was only family, only love, only the promise of a future where understanding would grow as naturally as the child beneath Belinda's heart. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.